Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session entitled Reimagining Research with Gen AI Revolution, conducted by Professor Roshan Ragel. So this webinar is organized by the Office of Research and Innovation Services of the Faculty of Postgraduate Studies and Research at Sri Lanka Technology Campus. And I'm pretty sure that the insights that are going to be shared by our keynote speaker today will be beneficial for all of us who are in the academic community. So I am going to be your moderator for the day, and I'm Umayangana Alavatta. So this webinar is actually one of the first of the series of webinars that we are going to host targeting the International Research Conference that we are going to have at Sri Lanka Technology Campus, which is to be held on 6th and 7th of November. And without further ado, let's move on with the proceedings today. And before that, I have few ground rules to ensure that the webinar is conducted in a smooth manner. So please ensure that your microphones are muted at all times. And also we would be opening up a question and an answer session towards the end of the webinar, where you can raise your questions and concerns on the topic that is discussed. And also, I would be happy to welcome all of you to use the chat section here. And I would be saving your questions towards the end to ask from Professor Ragel. And also, interestingly, this session will also be recorded. And if you are interested in viewing this later, this would be also available for you. So without further ado, let's move on to the proceedings today. And for that, I would now like to invite Dr. Migara Karunaratne, who is a co-chair of IRC 2024, to welcome the esteemed speaker. Dr. Migara. Okay. Yeah, I hope Dr. Migara would join.
Dr. Migara was here just
Yeah.
ago, but I think he has a technical difficulty and left the meeting. So we'll see about 2 minutes until he joins back.
Hi, everyone. I think Dr. Migara is not here, so let me welcome you formally for this beautiful event, which is organized by the Faculty of Postgraduate Research, Postgraduate Studies and Research. So thank you so much, Professor Roshan, for accepting our invitation to conduct this event at a very short notice on a very important and a trending topic in generative AI. So we welcome all of you guests. There are some students of the faculties and also many staff members who are joining us today. So thank you so much for joining. And I think we can probably start the session when you're ready. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Mr. Visura. With that introduction, Professor Roshan Ragel, the session is open for you. Let's move forward.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible and can
Yes,
hear me.
clear.
Right. Thank you very much. So once again, thank you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to an interested group on a trending topic. So this is a timeline of what is known as the Industrial Revolution, or in short, IR. As you can see, the timeline starts somewhere in 1850 and it goes up to 2025 next year. So the timeline speaks about what's happening in the industry. Although it talks about industry, the way how human live or the society operate is very much aligned with how the industry is. For example, if you take something like the second industrial revolution, which is about electricity. So when we invented or came across electricity, we figured that we can move a lot of machines using electricity, which changed the way how we operate, how human operate. We don't no longer use human power to push and pull, or even one before that where we were using steam engines. Not anymore. We started using electricity, which changes a lot of other things. For example, it changes how human work, what are considered work, what are considered like relaxation, and what are considered traveling, how traveling is a way of life. So these things changes. Like that, every industrial revolution has changed the way how we live. So somewhere between Industrial Revolution 3, where we came across computers, and 4, where we are talking about Internet of Things, things that are like all enabled by computers, anything and everything that you see around the world, which brought up this concept of machines that has some intelligence like us, or artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence has changed the way how we live and the way how we operate. So artificial intelligence is an important component in the latest industrial revolution. So today, we're going to talk about how a specific stream or sub domain of artificial intelligence, known as generative artificial intelligence, is changing the way how, again, we live. In this particular situation, I'm going to talk about research. So consider all of us do some research, one way or the other, either being a student in participating in a research project for your degree requirement, or a researcher who is inventing and coming up with new ideas and want to publish it, or anyone in between. All of us who are doing research, how this new trend, the generative AI revolution, is changing the way how we look at research. So this evening, I'm going to first introduce what this topic is, which is like generative AI, what it means, and so on, and how it is connected to research. And then I'll divide the rest of the discussion into one, the opportunities that we have due to or with the introduction of generative AI. And obviously, when there are new technologies introduced, we always have challenges. Even when, for example, the example I took like electricity or steam engine, when it was introduced, the people who did work without those will have to regain or retrain themselves into a specific, retrain them to the new technologies. So same happens in every technology. And also the technologies have their challenges as well. Now we'll talk about the challenges and opportunities of generative AI in this specific domain, that is research. And with the challenges, can we do anything about them? What can we do about these challenges? So I'll discuss a few considerations, what we have to consider when these challenges Give me a second. There's some noise. Okay. Right. So with the challenges, how do we overcome those challenges? What do you have to consider as human being who are using technology? We all have always have been when we encounter with new technologies, we always have been coming up with policies, guidelines, deciding or coming together collaboratively, deciding what to do and what not to do, and so on. So that we have always been doing. What is beneficial for human being or long-term human life, and what is decremental, all that we have been doing. So the same, we had to look at some consideration. With that, I'll conclude. So that's the plan for the rest of the 40 minutes or so. So just to start with, AI or artificial intelligence is not something that is very new. We have been talking about it since 1942, from the time Alan Turing broke the Enigma machine. Interesting story. Since then, a lot have been done, going into things like we building a software or a chatbot that can talk to us. And from there, recognizing voice to the latest generative AI, where the AI or artificial intelligence can generate all sort of different things. So we have gone through this phase, and like I mentioned earlier, generative AI is a sub domain under AI. So in the larger AI domain, we have what is known as machine learning. So from machine learning, and the AI, machine learning in AI, the idea is machines, can they learn by, or the way how we learn as human, by looking at things, by doing things on our own, by supervised by someone else like our parents teaching us, or the teachers, and so on. And other techniques like whether we can enable training by rewarding people or rewarding systems here in this example. So those different ways machines have been trained. And from machine learning, we started talking about deep learning, where there are other topics like neural network coming into picture. From at the same time with all this, there is also a parallel stream developing, data sciences with a lot of data. Like I said, with the industrial revolution, we started collecting a large amount of data around from our surroundings. So with all that, we are at a stage where we use what is known as, or we are we are using what is known as generative AI. The idea of generative AI is we have a system, or we call it a model, which is trained, and we can give an input to it, which is in the form, let's say, text, and it can generate the corresponding what we call it as output text. So text output is just one example of generative AI. But at the same time, the generative artificial intelligence has other forms like images and videos, audios, all of these, and even programs. And I'm sure you are familiar with a number of tools that can do these different type of generations using the input, which we call the prompt. So it all actually started with, although the concepts like generative AI and generative AI were there for a very long time, the main, the industry and like even those who wanted to make some serious effort and investment onto AI started with this Google's AlphaGo. So Google's AlphaGo, in fact, in 2017, actually 2016 late, there were some games, and then 2017, the AI won a competition against the Chinese Go master. Go is supposed to be a game. Since until that point, the AI researchers, so the researchers were considering was something that we can't make the machines to learn because it's so complex with so many different combinations possible in the game. However, when this happened, when AlphaGo, by looking at how the game is played, by looking at the previous moves, and by looking at a lot of data, it was able to figure out how to win even the Go Master. So since then, a lot have been done, not only in the West, but also in countries like China, where they realized if you have enough and more data, you can do a lot with AI. So there are two major powers developing from this. One is in the US, the company is there, and also obviously where there is considered to be more research done and more new ideas, new development done in terms of AI. But at the same time in China, where there's enough and more data because of the large amount of the large population and also a lot of automation that is happening. So there's a lot of data. So data is one of the key factors for AI, and therefore both economies are developing and doing a lot in that area, in that space. So here is a comparison to just understand. We said, okay, so the AlphaGo won chess master, the Go master. So now, is it just AlphaGo which can win a game, a specific game? Which is not true, since then there are a lot of different domains where AI technology has shown it can perform better than human. So if you take recent years, so by the way, this is like the timeline where the different applications were introduced or tried. So a recent one is somewhere closer to 2020. There were efforts to try and see whether an AI system can complete sentences like human, which is known as common sense completion, or can AI understand languages, or can AI read and comprehend, or can AI generate code, like you were saying a little while ago. So all these were tried, and they are all getting as good as human performance, and sometimes in these examples better than average human performance. So that is where we are, and therefore there is a need to look at how this technology works and also how we can make the best out of this technology. That's the whole idea of looking at this aspect now. So now specifically, let's look at research and how generative AI can bring in opportunities in research. So if you take a typical research life cycle, we can in fact divide it into four. I mean, it's up to our classification. However, here is one where we have the first phase, phase A, is research conception and execution. 2, B, dissemination. C, translation, which basically means can we take the research into innovation, research into products and so on. And when it's done, then the research starts making profit or like revenue. From there, you get research funding and you can go this cycle. So the last one is how do you get funding and how do you make sure the research is used for good and applied in the right way, ethical way, and so on. So those are also an aspect of research. So these are 4 different major stages in any large scale complete research cycle. So in this process, where can we use generative AI? In fact, I'm not going to take all 4 for our discussion today because the whole process is a lot of different steps. So for today, I'll just focus on one step, one of the 4 phases in the life cycle. So basically, I'll be talking about research conception execution, which is what normally a university or a research institution will do, where you come up with an idea and then you execute. Obviously, a university will also have other aspects like disseminate it, and also there are a lot of aspects of translation. And if you want to do research, you need funding, and therefore you have to work on those as well. However, today we'll be focusing only on the conception and execution part and how we can use generative AI for doing this. So the research conception phase has a number of steps, starting from the literature review. So what does literature review means is we want to go and look at the existing work that is already been done or happening and identify how we can use it to understand the background and then use it to do or take the next step, how we can improve or how we can improve what's already state of the art, as we call it. So to do that, we in fact can use generative AI in several places. Places like one is organizing, summarizing, and quickly getting directly into the literature. So for now, like pre-generative AI, how we would do this is we'll spend about a typical researcher for a particular project, let's say a project of 1 year or 2 years. The researcher will spend about 3 months going through literature, organizing them, summarizing them, understanding what is going on in these different research projects, and then identifying where the researcher can make a significant contribution. That is what is typically done in the literature review, and it takes a lot of time, at least about 3 months of full-time research work. So however, now with these tools, the generative AI tools that can help us do things like organizing, summarizing, and also connecting things together, we can do things faster. So one other aspect of the AI tools is that they can help you to find connections among a lot of different data or a lot of different points, because it can go through all of these faster, because it can read or comprehend faster compared to how a human does. By the way, when I say AI can comprehend faster, which is one of the listed item earlier as well, here you can see reading comprehension, it doesn't mean AI comprehends something the same way how human comprehend. However, how this, in this comparison, how this AI tool has reached beyond human performance or capabilities is by showcasing that it can do better in comprehension tests that are performed to do comprehension of human. When the AI tools are taking them, they perform better. That's how this comparison is coming. So meaning, although AI doesn't really do comprehension the same way how human does, but it can mimic that behavior, and therefore it can help us. That's the whole idea. So there are a number of tools I'm going to just introduce, which can be used to achieve this phase, the very first part of basically the literature review, which is the part of the first phase, where research conception or conception and execution. So conducting the research. So coming up with an idea and conducting research. I'll go into these tools one by one, and therefore I'll not talk about them right now, immediately. So what else can we use these tools for? Although there are concerns about generative AI tools being can be factually incorrect, it is also possible, or a lot of researchers and educators have shown that it's possible to use these tools in a certain way to achieve fact-checking or specific searching. So although these tools can go wrong, it's possible to restrict these tools to certain domains and certain pointers. So for example, I can give a book to this tool, or book to generative AI model, and then ask, okay, give me an answer only from this book. So if I say so, then what it's going to give is answers from the book, and therefore if we can trust the book, then we trust the fact. So it's possible to do those. So if people have figured these things out over time, and therefore fact-checking is possible with these tools. So something else that is very interesting that we can do with this tool in the first phase of the research I mentioned is ideation and hypothesis generation. So sometimes when you want to come up with new ideas, we have what is known as this writer's block or writer's things that sometimes it's things like what he says, okay, it's just there, but we are unable to get it out. Right? So situations like that, what we normally do in a research group, what we normally will do is we'll discuss with our colleagues, discuss with those who have already been doing similar research, and we'll have a lot of discussions, presentations, experience sharing, plus literature review presentation, sharing them. That's how we brainstorm to come up with ideas. But now, okay, so with that, it's obvious that such an arrangement has its own limitations. One, for instance, in a place where there's not enough research culture, not enough researchers working in research, such a environment is difficult to achieve. And obviously others, even if you are in a research environment where there is enough researchers, still they'll have their own thing to do. Individually, each one of them have their things to do, and also the time of interaction you get for brainstorming is limited. However, now with these tools, it's possible to have 24/7 your own customized like brainstorming partner. So where you can throw back in ideas and get back some responses. Again, we can make sure whether these responses are factually correct and not by limiting the scope of the responses we are getting and so on. So it's possible to do ideation, and hypothesis is something very similar, generation. So in addition to this, it's also possible to use these generative AI tools to improve productivity. So we can do things faster. So which is already obvious in the examples we took. Say, for example, if you have a complete research paper of 30 pages or a thesis of 5,000 words, if I want to know first, as a researcher, if I want to know what this topic, what this thesis is saying, I don't have to go through pages after pages. Even if I'm skimming through them, still it takes a very long time. Now I can use tools to make things faster, right? And also we can use these tools to do things like making a draft of an idea, description of an illustration, all sort of different things. So the other way around, making an illustration for us by giving a description, these things, and also obviously things like if you are doing work in one programming language and if you want to convert it to another language to see whether it does better, so such translation, all these are possible to do with generative AI, and therefore we can improve productivity. So these are a number of areas where we can use generative AI to make sure we improve the overall research performance, which also means the research work we do can be done faster. Say, for example, the literature review I mentioned earlier usually is done, let's say, in about 3 months. Now, either we can do the work faster. Second, if we still get the 3 months, we can obviously do a better job of doing it. So usually a literature review, when it is done as a regular literature review without going through a systematic approach, which takes much longer. For example, what is known as the systematic literature review takes a very much longer time compared to a regular like a primitive literature review. However, now with a generative AI tool, within the 3 months, if you still get 3 months to do literature review, you can do a better job by using these tools and therefore accelerating the process and productivity. So where else can we use generative AI is within this research scope is data generation and obviously data analysis. So data generation, we normally make synthetic data for a lot of testing in research as well. So for example, if you don't get access to data for various reasons, or you get access to data at a later stage, let's say you are doing a study where you take a reasonable amount of time to collect data from some subjects. In a situation like that, collect data from subjects. For example, I'm talking about things like you collect some vitals like ECG from subjects, right? So situations like that, it takes a while to do that part. So during that part, if a group is developing some algorithm and they want to test it, so what you can do is you can now generate this data, synthetic data, using generative AI. However, it's not a good idea, like I have highlighted here, is to use generative AI as a substitute to human survey. Right? Say, for example, you do, like not just you collect data from various input sensors and so on, but at the same time you also use to collect data from human their concepts, like their preferences, their ideas, and so on. So we don't recommend. It is not recommended to use generative AI for generating those data. So let's now go into little more detail. I was just highlighting the different aspects within the concepts and execution of research where we can use generative AI. So here is an example. So literature review using generative AI. So like literature review has a number of steps. So we are going into those, looking at those steps. Research question, resource identification, where to find the literature basically. So you first come up with a question. Okay, so this is the scope, this is what I want to do, and you have to go and find resources. And you have to analyze the key findings in that literature. Then you might have to write, when you're doing a literature review, obviously the end product will be a document, which is written, basically a written document, right? So therefore you had to synthesize and you had to write it. And obviously you also had to do things like citing during the writing. And another process in the literature review is, when the literature review is written, there is also, we had to do things like review of the literature. I mean, the review of what is written. Right? So these are things that are done in a process. So in this process, there are a number of tools. I mentioned this earlier as well, that we can use. So these tools, all of them are connected to generative AI or an LLM, a large language model. But these tools by themselves are not generative AI tools. For example, SciSpace is a collection of research papers. So they are basically a research paper archive. Now, SciSpace by itself has some 300 million papers. And what now the SciSpace developers have done is they have integrated a generative AI engine into their system, which means the generative AI, the LLM, is trained on those 300 million papers. Now, if you can ask any question to the system by prompt, and therefore the tool can give us responses. Let's just look at some examples. So we'll start with the first tool called Elicit. So which is again a tool that is connected to getting recent. Not sure.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I raised the hand.
Yeah.
One question. If we use that Elicit or SciSpace, now I heard universities have a tool, whether we are using like these tools to cross check. They can cross check we have used these tools or not.
Okay. Okay.
So we have to cite them, no? Now, recently I have done one using ChatGPT. They have given me with citations. So I cited, I use citations whenever I use with the ChatGPT. Elicit is also like that, so we can have a good news.
Yeah, it's a bit different. So let me, okay, so the tool, things like ChatGPT is a tool to generate when you give a prompt, it generates, right? So here is a tool, it does little more. Yeah, so I'm just talking. So Elicit, let me just quickly explain. So tool like Elicit, what it does is you can see in this example, you can ask a question like role of Gen AI in education. Let's say a topic, or role of Gen AI in research. You can ask a question. What it does is from the system, from its database, it will find the research papers. So here you can see it says 4 papers. Actually, 4 papers come with the free version of Elicit. If you have a paid version, you can even get more papers. So 4 papers, it will give a summary from those 4 papers, which it identified for these keywords. So it's going to give a summary. You can see the references also highlighted. So it gives a summary from those papers. At the same time, we can add more things. For example, we can add like abstract from the summary of the abstract of each paper. And we can also go and find other related papers for these 4 papers and so on. So it's like it's going to give you not just a summary of or generated content for something that you say. Here it is taking things from a lot of places, lot of papers. In fact, like a tool like Elicit has access to large databases of research papers, and it gives you the summary of 4 papers. So now it's up to us whether we want to just copy paste this into our research submission, or whether we are going to like rewrite it. So that's the second part. So that is, I'll come to that a little later, whether we had to cite it or not and so on. But here we are just talking about getting this data from the papers, right? So there are similar other tools. For example, another very popular tool is called Connected Papers. It's a visual graph. I'll just quickly show you how it works. So basically you can go to connectedpapers.com and put a topic again. So when you put a topic, it lists a number of papers and it identifies one paper as the original paper. In fact, like it's also possible for you to just put a paper here as a search point. When you put a paper like that, it shows in a graph what are the other papers that are connected to this paper and how close they are connected. For example, you can, as you can see here, it says note size is the number of citation each paper has, and note color is the publishing year, and the reference is somewhere here. Yes, our reference is here. Like this darker color means new papers, lighter color means old papers, and the paper that are closer to each other will be closer, clustered, put together. So this is like, instead of you going and finding like, okay, one paper and how do I go and find all the other papers that are similar, you can just put it here and it lists down all the papers on put down all the papers on a graph. And the good part about it is you can just click one of these and see its summary here on the side, right? In fact, like you can add few more things. You can even like take multiple papers and get a summary out of it and so on the paid version. So number of things you can do with it. There are more tools. SciSpace, like I said, the website for the SciSpace tool is typeset.io. What it does is, one, you can just search for a paper and start exploring. Another one is, if you have a document or a paper, you can upload it. So you can upload it and ask question in that paper. Let's say you have like a thesis or a paper, 30 pages, you upload it, and you don't have to go through the 30 pages, but you can ask questions like, what is the result here? If it says, okay, result as this and this and this in this paper, you can ask more question, how this result is connected to this find, this hypothesis in the paper, how this result is connected to the conclusion of the paper, or various other questions. In a paper, you can ask, basically you can quickly build a chat sort of a system within that paper, and you can ask. So that's but something that you can do with Typeset. In the interest of time, I'll not show every step of everyone. But you also have other options on type, like SciSpace. It is called typeset.io is the website, where you can do summarizing. You can select a part and ask it to explain that part. Let's say you have some word or a phrase that is not clear to you. It's more research jargon. Then you can just select that part and ask it to explain it, and it will explain those parts. All of these are generated by Generative AI. So you can also add more columns. As you can see, here is an interesting one. From SciSpace, where you have papers identified from various other means. Let's say for you search and found papers, or you uploaded one and got other papers, related papers. You can add other columns. For example, here, these papers, you also can add columns like, the method that is used. So you can see, you can add other columns like conclusions of that paper, results of that paper, summary of the abstracts of each one of those papers, the limitation on those papers, the literature survey that is done in those papers, in all that you can find by adding those columns and making a table or something, and then you can use it for the further research or come like the next page, which is like writing that as a literature review and so on. So all those you can different phases you can do. So these are some examples. By the way, most of these tools I mentioned are also, they also have plugins for things like ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, as you know, now they don't call it plugins, they call them MyGPT. So if you have a paid version of ChatGPT, you can go and find what is known as MyGPT or GPT store, as you call it now. So where you can go and find, okay, if you go to the GPT store and looks for SciSpace, so they have a SciSpace MyGPT. And within the ChatGPT window, then what you'll be doing is you'll be working with MyGPT, not on the you will be working on SciSpace. So either you can go to the SciSpace website and start working on the website, or and if you want to do more with the SciSpace website, you have to pay the subscription and do. But if you have a ChatGPT subscription, for instance, then you can use it and use the SciSpace, the customized version of ChatGPT, and ask questions or do things within the SciSpace. SciSpace is an example, like I said, and there are others like Elicit and so on. So those are things that you can do. So those are some opportunities that you have on a specific area. I didn't go into each one of them because we don't have enough lot of time. The next one I wanted to just quickly go through is some challenges that we face in any technology. Here it is generative AI and related to research. Whenever you use different technologies, one of the problems that we have is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. What it basically means is when you start looking at a technology, something like ChatGPT, when it became popular about 2+ years ago, what happened was we got this wow factor, which basically means we didn't know that AI bots can do things like this. And when it does things that we don't expect, we think it can do everything, which is obviously wrong, right? So which is known as the over-reliance problem or the Dunning-Kruger effect. So how do we overcome this is by going through this cycle or these steps. Basically what we had to do is we had to start using is understand what's going on, understand the tool's limitation or a technology's limitation, the possibilities. By doing it, we will go to a stage where we are ready to use it then. So how do we do it? Is by understanding what it does and also going through like courses or with people who understand how these things work, learn from them, and take the time to go through the whole cycle. And then you start using it, you will use it the right way. If not, you will make a lot of mistakes, and therefore basically you are relying too much on the system than what is expected. Other challenges in a system like this, they lack logical reasoning. Although these tools pass some logical, like some tests, they still don't understand what really these things are. You can see a lot of examples that are put out there, YouTube and various other places where you can see the limitation. This has a limitation. So you have to understand that this has a limitation. And then like when these tools are generating such output, make sure we double check and we believe on the user or the person who is going to report the output of the tool, not just the tool itself. Obviously, it can have misinformation for multiple reasons. One, it might be due to outdate, or it might also due to things that are put by, so this is trained from data that is out there. Not all of them are right. There can be wrong information. And I already mentioned about outdated. And at the same time, as you already know, there is also bias, meaning the data is generally trained by the community who generate the data. So if we have a community which is not generating the data, and then that community is disadvantaged because their data is not represented. So the output that the system gives or the large language model gives is for representing the community that gave the data, not the one that is using, if there are two different communities. There are also concerns about data privacy, whether the data that we use for communicating with these tools, can they be used for training? And those are concerns. And if the data that is being used for training is taken from people who didn't want it to be used, there can be problems. I'll not go into the details, but those challenges are there. And one of you asked a little while ago about the tools that can identify things that are generated by generative AI. Like, for example, there are tools that can identify whether I copied a text from my colleague or my friend or my classmate. So when both of you submit a document, the tool can compare the two and say, okay, so this is coming from this person. So similar way, it's also possible for tools to identify whether a submission or things that is generated by an AI tool. So it's possible to do. However, it's not easy as we think. That is why I call it a complexity of plagiarism detection. Although there are tools that says, okay, this is plagiarized by another, like it is generated by basically another tool, it is not always, these tools are not always perfect for a good reason, right? So because the idea of generative AI system is to make text that are human-like, that are generated by human-like. That's the whole idea of the whole research of generative AI, where if it is about text, generate text as good as how human does. Now, the opposite side, what we are doing is we are building more tools to go and see whether this text is generated by human or not. So therefore, there is a race between the two tools, right? So how good they can do depends on the tool and depends on the situation. So here is an example to show that, so this is a paper that was published last year, is an example to show how GPT detectors, the tools we are talking about, the things that detect this is a AI generated text, how the GPT detectors are biased against non-native English writers. That is what this article talks about. This article is coming out of Stanford, so it's a very reliable article written by researchers there. So what they are showing is if the text that is generated by, so by the way, so this first graph shows how AI detectors, a number of them, these AI detectors detects a human written text as AI text generated. Like for example, the tool is given with a lot of human written text, and this tool, originality.ai, detects 76% of them as AI generated. The interesting part is this text was written by people who are non-native English speakers. So people like us. So, however, at the same time, the same tool is given with text written by native English speakers. So it is given by US 8th grade essays, which are US students, 8th grade students, their essays. So when the text is given by the tool is given with text written by US students, it shows very small, it shows it is not AI generated. But at the same time, when the text is given as, like the text is from people who are non-native English speakers, basically these TOEFL essays, as you know, are done by non-native English speakers who are doing TOEFL. So in those situations, the tool identify it as AI generated. So the tool is not doing well. By the way, these are different tools and not all tools are like same. There are differences. And like I said, there's more research put on certain tools and certain not and so on. But this is research done on these tools and the comparison. So here's another comparison where the red color thing is generated by a free AI generated generative AI tool, ChatGPT 3.5 basically. And the second one is after doing some improvement. So the same researcher has shown is if you put enough effort, you can cheat the AI detectors. So originally it's detecting about 68% as AI generated. Second time it goes to 38% in average. So it's possible. So it's a complex problem because like I said, there's a race between the two. Right? So therefore, the best option is not to have these tools and so on, but to have this race. But because like this race is going to end at a point where the AI tools or AI generating tools are going to do as good as how we do. When I say how we do, I'm also talking about how non-native English speakers, native English speakers, all of us do. they are doing differently as there's a bias, right? So the English speakers with their text are different from non-native English speakers, but the tools will, there'll be a time where the tools will be able to differentiate those differences and do better. So at a situation like that, these tools are no longer going to be useful. However, what we had to really do is think about how we define plagiarism. What is considered plagiarism, whether it is the AI generated text or whether it is something else. Right, so therefore, I have just listed down few considerations, what we can do. So obviously, these tools have their limitations and they can make mistakes, misinformation, bias, and so on. Therefore, it's up to the person who is using the tool to make sure they verify. So the duty of verification is up to the review, like the person who is using the tool. So we also call this as human in the loop. So whenever we use one of these generative AI tools to generate text and present it as our text, the person who is presenting it, it is the person's responsibility to make sure what is generated there is appropriate, and the responsibility of what is in that text or anything else for that matter, not just text, is the one who is presenting it. Okay, so that's the whole idea. And in fact, like one of you mentioned about citation, so all the major publishers and also the citation styles now have almost all the major publishers, I should not say all, almost all the major publishers and citation styles now include how to cite things when they are generated by generative AI tools like ChatGPT. So here's a style that is recommended by American Psychological Association, APA. It's a style of reference. IEEE has its own and so on. So there are, I missed a slide on the publishers. There is also similar things on publishers. Publishers has come up with, okay, if you are publishing papers with Elsevier, and Elsevier is saying, okay, if you are using generative AI tool, you should do this. You should cite it like this, and then you might have to add the generated text, how you generated it as an appendix, and so on. So there are different steps, but then it is already included into the process of publication. Actually, research is a place where research and publication is a place where the publishers have taken steps very early to accommodate generative AI into the process. But obviously, with, like one of you said, obviously with the citations and with acknowledging the use of such tools. So just to complete, there are also concerns like what happens next. Okay, so now these tools are there, they are, looks like they are doing well, and therefore we are improving productivity. Is at all? And how are we going to make sure that we have enough jobs, and whether we are satisfied with what we are doing and so on. Therefore, this World Economic Forum last year came up with top 10 skills considering generative AI existence. So they are listed here: analytical skills, creative thinking, quality control, leadership and social influence, and so on. So these are identified as skills. And with those skills, we believe that we should be able to still use these tools. Here is a list of tools for various items. There are tools even for doing like prompt, so generating new prompts, and come up with the better outcome for us. Right. So just before finishing, I just wanted to mention this because we were talking about jobs and so on. So this is a famous quote from Fei-Fei Li, a scientist from US. AI won't really replace humans. So AI, we are not going to really lose jobs, all of the human, and AI is going to take all the jobs over. But those who know how to use AI, they will definitely going to replace those who don't know how to use AI in their jobs. So that's what's happening. And this has happened even in the past for various other technologies, and therefore this is no big difference in that aspect. Right, so that's all I have, and thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take a few questions, depends on the time the organizers have. So I see that.
Professor, am I okay to ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for raising the question. Please give us a few minutes and we will be opening the forum for questions. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Professor, for that wonderful and interesting webinar. And it is indeed an eye-opening topic now that we have a lot of challenges and also opportunities with the generative AIs. I'm pretty sure that this would be an eye-opening topic for all the academics over here. So that was Professor Roshan Ragel, and he is a distinguished computer engineering professor at the University of Peradeniya, recognized as Sri Lanka's leading computer scientist by the AD Scientific Index from 2021 to 2024. He is a senior member of the IEEE and the IEEE Computer Society. Professor Ragel has significantly contributed to the fields of IoT, wearable computing, bioinformatics, AI, and machine learning with over 200 peer-reviewed publications. He leads the National Research and Education Network of Sri Lanka, which is known as LEARN, and holds key roles in national educational and AI strategy committees. As a founder of the AI Forum for Academics, Professor Ragel is a prominent voice in exploring generative AI's impact on higher education. He has also been a visiting scholar at prestigious institutions worldwide. So with that, thank you so much, Professor. And now we are going to open up the forum for questions and queries that you have.
Thank you. So I see there are already, there's one directly asked for me, it seems.
Yeah.
We can use LLM to fine-tune languages of the text, but the problem is AI detectors categorize them as AI generated. How can we overcome or handle? So the question is about, the question is when you use AI to generate text, and the detectors are going to identify them as AI generated, how do we overcome? So I spend a little time explaining the challenge there, but I think, okay, so we should look at a short-term situation and a long-term situation, in my personal opinion. Short-term is now we have an education system where we rely on the learners or even anybody else, let's say a researcher writing things, and writing is considered a skill. And writing is also evaluated in certain situations. For example, let's say I'm going to write a journal article to publish in a reputed journal. Now I being a researcher and also a professor, and like I mentioned, several papers I have already written on my own. Now the journal publisher, do they have to look at what I'm trying to convey or who wrote the text, right? So that is the question that we have to come and answer with, right? So in my opinion, in a situation like that, who wrote the text, whether I used a tool to write a text, whether I used a tool like Grammarly to correct the text, or whether I used ChatGPT to generate 2 or 3 nice sentences of my idea, or even more sentences of my idea, it doesn't really matter, is my opinion. It's not just my opinion. That is what even the big publishers like IEEE or big publishers like Elsevier, Springer, these are like large publishers who are publishing major journals, even Nature, are allowing. So what they're saying is, okay, you can use these tools and you put the idea, generate text, and you can submit it. And you say, okay, so this part I generated by using a tool like this. And the whole idea is the communication there is to communicate the idea or the finding of a research and so on, not how it is written. So at the same time, they are also telling you to make sure if you are writing this and if you are using a tool to write it and submit, make sure it is correct, because the one who is reviewing it, the one who is consuming your writing will consider it is written by you, not a tool. Although you not like you can't forego the responsibility of what is in it. That's one side of it. Other side of it is if you are trying to communicate and if the matter that is communicated is important, who write the material in a situation like that. But then there are also situations where we expect learners to write. Why? Because writing we think is a useful skill. Writing we think will improve human brain, our memory, the way how we learn is from small age. So there are places where we think writing is important skill. In a situation like that, we had to stop the kids who are learning to write, not because writing by itself is useful, maybe it's not because we can use a tool, but if it can help human learning, human brain development, and so on, then we had to keep those skills. So this is like a typical example that we, an analogy we normally take is something like a key, like a calculator, right? So a calculator is in existence for the last several decades, but still in primary school, the kids are not using calculators, right? So they are still adding and multiplying and dividing and so on. They are learning all those. Why? We think they are useful for the human development, and the society agree on it, and we are acting upon it. So something similar here, although it's very early now, such a discussion has to happen, and in fact, such discussions are happening. The learning behavior, the experts who are understanding how brain works and brain learn and so on are exploring these situations and doing experiments to figure out whether it's useful. So that's a very long answer, but that's stopping or like overcoming or cheating is not the whole idea, right? So we have to be open that if you're using the tool and the research publishers are allowing it, other situations depends on the situation. We have to decide how to go forward. Like if it's a primary school where writing is important, you don't let the kid to use their mobile phones. They don't even have one, assuming. If they have, not to like generate and submit where they will not even learn how to write. Right, so those different, it depends on the situation we have to decide. There are also, okay, let me check questions. So there is a question I see. Do you want to read the question? I can read, right?
Okay, no problem.
If you want to read that, will be
Okay.
nice.
Please
I like it if you can read.
Right. So please explain briefly and concisely about the three
topics. Yeah, I'm going to skip that question actually, because I haven't talked anything about detailed AI other topics. So I had to start from the very beginning. So in fact, like what we had done here today is we just said, okay, AI is a big area, and we're just talking about a specific sub area, which is generative AI. So here we are talking about a lot of other things like swarm and so on. In fact, like I do a lot of research in these areas, but today I'll skip them because it needs a lot of explanation. Yes.
Right. And also there's another question raised. If I use ChatGPT for paraphrasing a sentence from a journal article, and if I used it for my article, will it be deducted by plagiarism software?
Yes, it will be detected by plagiarism software. But the journal, that is okay, because that depends almost most of the journals, not all the journals, but most of the journal publishers are accepting text generated by generative AI as long as you cite them. So it is accepted in that sense, but it will the tool can detect it. Yes.
Right. I think Udara has a question.
Yes, Professor. Extremely sorry. So I was losing connection few times ago. So I think I got to know some answering would be kind of connected to my question. So I'm a lecturer in SLTC. So my area is like fashion and textiles. So recently I was working with some AI tools like Julius or something like that to create some drafts on charts. So, and I got know that it's okay to put in methodology that I have generated this in this, like, so is it fine to clarify under ethical consideration, and like are there any kind of list to generate that kind of ideas or graph under kind of APO, IEEE or something like under kind of standards? So that's what I wanted to ask from you, Professor, and this is really interesting, and thank you for your session.
So thank you, Darren. So the question is whether, in fact, like IEEE or any other, IEEE is specifically for a single domain, but then publishers like Elsevier or Springer is publishing papers and a variety of domains, starting from social sciences to medicine and healthcare and engineering and all sort of fields. So they are all accepting things generated by or material generated by generative AI tools, and they have specific guidelines, okay, saying, so usually the guideline comes under the author guideline. So there's about, most of these publishers has about a page which says this is how you do it. And for example, if I remember right, someone like Elsevier, they'll say, okay, you can use the tool, but when you generate it, Elsevier asks you to submit the generative AI screenshots on how you prepare it. So that will go as a part of the review process. They'll look at them as evidences, like, okay, so this is cited and this is how it was done. So like that, they have given, most the publishers who are accepting these have given guidelines. So you can follow those. And in the guideline, obviously, you will be also mentioning the tool that you use, the version of the tool that you use, whether it's Julius, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Elicit, or whether it's connected papers. You will say which tool you used and on which date you use, basically, because these tools evolve. Different times they can be of different versions and so on. So that's how it works for now.
Right, Prof. We have another question here. What are the Gen AI tools for used for statistical data analysis?
So statistical data analysis, we have with ChatGPT, there are a number of plugins. I hope you all are familiar with just to because I mentioned this earlier, but I couldn't show. Maybe I just can do that for a second. Let me just quickly share my screen.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. So something like if you go to ChatGPT, you have what is known as the paid version of ChatGPT has what is known as their GPTs. For some reason. So here you can go like, so these are
Professor,
my.
see the entire screen.
Okay, so what do you see? You are seeing the
Only
GPT.
the tab, like the main tab. Yeah.
It will take a little while to pop up. Yeah. Are you still like that, or is it better now?
Yes.
It's taking a little maybe a
We
lag
only
there.
see the search bar and the
Oh yeah, so the search bar has, I hope you can see the GPT part and then the search bar.
yes.
So this
Yes.
is coming from a ChatGPT's Explorer, which is like their online store type, right? So where you can go and search for tools, like for example, statistical analysis, you can go for search for tools for statistical analysis. There's one called Statistics Stats, Probability and Statistic Professor. So there are tools for even learning statistics. There are tools for you doing statistical analysis. Things like there's a financial statement analyzer, personalized statement analyzer, mathematical statistics, strata analyzer. So these tools are also these plugins or these parts are in fact coming from standard. Because I'm searching for statistics, they are coming from the standard statistic package like software, and their integration to generative AI. So those are the tools here. So this is true for others. Like for example, if I want to do something like counseling, right? And so I can find tools that are related. In fact, these days, these tools are getting updated so often. A lot of people are generating new ones. So there are plenty of them in various areas. Like you can see the popular ones I'm using are listed here. Like SciSpace is something that I use. I mentioned about SciSpace earlier. So SciSpace is the plugin here, where if I go to SciSpace, you can see SciSpace has access to 287 million papers. And if I start talking here under this window, then I'll be talking to not just ChatGPT, but ChatGPT that is built with the SciSpace database. So it can answer any question related to these 287 million papers. And it can list down the papers, their citations, because these are real papers, like they are from the SciSpace archive. In fact, like a tool like ChatGPT has access to those as well. So the question that you are asking about statistical tools, the new the standard statistical tools also now has integration to generative AI. But at the same time, generative AI chatbots like ChatGPT has the statistical tool integrated, which means they can do the statistical part while doing them with the help of the understanding of languages, large language model understanding.
Right. So with the time constraint, we will open the space for one more question from Sam, and then we will finish the Q&A session. Sam, do you have the question?
Yes, am I audible to you?
Yes, clear.
Okay, Professor, thank you for the opportunity. Professor, will there be a situation where now my knowledge about AI is quite limited, but will there be a situation where now we are doing research as human beings, but will AI also do research without involving human beings, and will they publish in journals? I don't know whether that's anything purposeful is there, but will there be a situation like that where we don't even understand the AI is doing research and it is publishing somewhere, that kind of situation?
So AI on its own, starting something and doing is still not making sense because all of these tools are things that we had to initiate something, or we had to like at least give them power for them to run, right? Not like they can go and eat from grass and like fruits and vegetables and they can live on their own. So that's not by itself making sense, but part of your question makes some sense. So for example, can AI comprehend things that we can't by our nature, and therefore they can generate or they can come up with ideas that we can't comprehend? That might happen, right? For example, like so even now, what you are saying is okay. If I give you 237 million papers and ask you to comprehend that and answer some questions, I can't do it, or none of us can do it. But an AI tool is doing it. That is the SciSpace example I'm taking, right? So such situations are possible, and therefore it's possible if it's beyond our comprehension to connect more than, I was told, somewhere like 80 or 60 number of different things at the same time. But AI tools, it's possible as long as there is enough computing power and memory and so on. It's possible for it to connect any number of different things. So by connecting such several number of different things, it might be possible for it to come up with some ideas, some new things that we can't even comprehend. That is possible. But the first part of it is not, it's more like a science fiction to me. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for all the questions raised, and thank you so much, Professor, for those valuable thoughts. And now I would like to invite Dr. Migara Karunaratne, the co-chair of IRC 2024, to share a few words about the prospective conference that we are going to have. Dr. Migara?
Yes, thank you, Mangana. So I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're audible.
Right, thank you. So, so first of all, thank you very much, Professor Roshan, for the interesting speech. And so I'm really sorry I missed the initial part of the webinar because of some unexpected technical issues. Yes, so and thank you all for the participants as well. I know you're having an exam these days, most of the SLTC students and staff members. So thank you very much for coming and joining the first webinar in the series of the IRC 2024. And I also like to invite all of you to join the IRC 2024 conference. So it will be held on 6th and 7th November, and still we are accepting the papers. So if anyone is interested, you still have time to publish your own work. in the conference. So I'll quickly remind the tracks as well for everyone. So we have a lot of we have a wide scope in this conference. We have tracks related to business and tourism, arts and humanities, even and mathematics and science, agriculture, engineering and computing. And I think there's a track on machine learning and AI as well. So likewise, there's a very wide scope, so you can publish your papers. Yes, so I won't take much of your time. So thank you very much, everyone, for organizing this event. And yeah, thank you very much, Mayangana. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Migara, for that. And now to formally conclude the webinar, I would now like to invite Dr. Lakshita Pahalagedara, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Postgraduate Studies and Research, to present the vote of thanks to our speaker. Over to you, Dr. Lakshita.
Thanks, Umangana. And before I propose the word of thanks, I have a quick question to ask from the professor. Professor, now we discussed about how you use generative AI especially in literature search. Now, historically, if you consider, most of the innovations were accidents, and more than that, even in our times, in the recent past, especially when you define the problem statement, it has also become, in many cases, become an accident, because when you do literature search, considering one particular problem, then you realize that there could be many other problems related to that, or not totally different from what you are looking for. So especially when you use, it's really true that you get a complementary brain when you do literature search with generative AI. But will that hinder the other part of that, because we already experienced? So what would be the impact on in the long run, since there are a lot of young researchers joined in this webinar? What do you think about that?
That's a very interesting, actually, question. In fact, my take, I mean, we can always discuss and argue about it, very happy, but my take is that we have to still educate our researchers, young researchers, to make use of the time, so that by using these tools, they're going to save some time. But make use of my opinion is to make use of the time to do better, right? So now that there are tools where you can, so those days, like when we were doing research, we didn't even have Google Scholar. We had to go and find papers. We had to go and find papers from research archives, sometimes in in libraries and so on, library loans, all sort of things we did. So now starting from, forget about generative AI, right? So we want to find research papers from 5 or 6 major archives. Every paper out there is so easy now, right? So but still, the going through these papers, understanding what they mean, even if the tools are giving us connections, seeing the gaps, they still have a lot more to do. And my opinion, I think we can do a better job, because we get more time to do the human thing or the researcher thing, right? So the tools can help us to put things together in some aspect, but we get more time to do more research. And I in fact have seen evidences of it already. Even some of my students who are bright now are doing much productive work with their contribution, obviously. Not like it's not the tool doing it, obviously. So the tool can help, but the young researchers, you still have the human factor in doing research, understanding the gap, and also things like how it applies in a situation. Like all that we know much better because we have that experience, and making a tool to make those understanding might never happen. Yeah. So yeah, that's the answer. So you can do better.
Thank you, Professor. So with that, I would like to propose the formal word of thanks. I would like to thank Professor Roshan Ragel for the insightful, very interesting webinar which took place just now. And thank you very much, Professor, for accepting our invitation. And we would like to have a lot of collaborations with you in the future. And also, I would like to thank the HORIS, Office of Research and Innovation Services of SLTC, and the Research Administration Unit of SLTC for organizing this event. And thank you everyone in the Committee of IRC 2024. And also just joined the webinar. Thanks a lot and have a good night. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshita, for those words. And I'm sure that you all have gained a lot of knowledge as to what GenAI has to do with the research work that we are also going to do in future. And once again, after thanking Professor Ragel for this interesting session, and I hope that you would also join with SLTC with the future ventures as well. So thank you everyone for your participation, and we will also be meeting once again with another webinar organized by the Office of Research and Innovation Services of the Faculty of Postgraduate Studies and Research. With that, we will now end the session. Thank you, everyone, and good night.